and George Miles in 1995, and we've been championing mentoring in our region ever since. We're an intermediary organization. So what that means is we work really hard to provide training, technical assistance, and resources free of charge to programs and volunteer mentors to make sure that they're prepared to offer the very best mentoring support to kids in our region. One of the coolest things about my job, I tell people all the time, is we get to see mentoring happening in so many different ways in our community. And we know that young people succeed in school and in life when they're surrounded by caring adults who believe in them. So mentoring really does have this magic all its own, and I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that this evening. But I want to start us off with just a quick mentoring mindset exercise. So I mentioned earlier, if you could please grab a pen and paper, and now's the time for those. I want everyone to just take a minute to think about someone in your life who supported you, someone who took extra time to encourage you, or maybe they helped you through a challenge or a problem, or inspired you to set goals and achieve them. Someone who showed you that they cared, that they made you feel like you mattered. When I ask this, a lot of people think about a parent or a family member, but think about your broader networks too. Maybe it was a teacher in grade school, or a former sports coach, or a bus driver who always had a kind word for you. Just think about one of the people in your life who has made a difference and helped you get to where you are today. When you have someone in mind, I'd like you to write their name down on that piece of paper and just hang on to it for now. We're going to circle back to those in a bit. Everyone got it? I did mine prior to, so I have mine ready to go. All right. Okay, so now I'd like to turn it over to one of our Young Professional Board members, Colleen Storm, who is going to introduce tonight's special guest. Colleen.
Hi guys, good evening. My name is Colleen Storm, and I am a member of the Young Professional Board. I've been on the board for several years, and I get the privilege to introduce our distinguished guests tonight, Gregg Behr and Emily Marco. So I just want to give a little intro and background on both, and then I'll turn it over to Gregg. So Gregg Behr is the Executive Director of the Grebel Foundation. He is a father and a children's advocate whose work is inspired by his hero, Fred Rogers. For more than a decade, he has helped lead Remake Learning, a network of educators, scientists, artists, and makers he founded in 2007 to international renown. Formed in Rogers' real-life neighborhood of Pittsburgh, Remake Learning has turned heads everywhere from Forbes to the World Economic Forum for its efforts to ignite children's curiosity, encourage creativity, foster justice and belonging in schools, libraries, museums, and more. Gregg is a graduate of the University of Notre Dame and also Duke University. He has honorary degrees from Carlow University and St. Vincent College. He's an advisor to the Brookings Institute and the Fred Rogers Center, and has been cited by Barack Obama, Richard Branson, and the Disruptor Foundation as an innovator and thought leader. Emily Marco is an illustrator, author, and visual strategist. She creates visual tools that empower people to take strategic action. Emily sketches in one-on-one sessions, group meetings, and events to capture thoughts, dialogue, or presentation as vibrant pictures. This engaging and scientifically proven visual approach can help others organize ideas, simplify complex topics, map out solutions, energize audience, or add spark to their story. So welcome Emily and Gregg, and I'll turn it over to Gregg to get our presentation started.
Colleen, thank you so much. And Kristen, thank you to you as well. And I don't know that I'm supposed to reveal this yet, so I won't, but I have my name written down here. If I may have the opportunity to share slides, please. Can you all see that? All right, fantastic. So first of all, hi. It is really a joyful honor to be here. And as Colleen just mentioned, I have the privilege and great opportunity to serve as the executive director of the Grebel Foundation, which, if you're not familiar with the Grebel Foundation, is a local private charitable foundation focused on the well-being of children, their families, and educators across our region, with a focus on early learning, great learning in schools and out of school time places, and support for all of those places where young people are learning alongside and together with the adults in their lives. I also, as noted, am involved with a learning network called Remake Learning, and am the co-author of a recent book that I'll mention here briefly at the end. I've also been incredibly lucky to be involved and associated with the Mentoring Partnership in many ways now for almost 2 decades, and had the huge opportunity to serve on the board for 9 years. And it's still the board to which I point to as a great working board that taught me what it means to be ideally a great board member in service to an organization and mission. And I'm forever grateful for that and my association to the Mentoring Partnership. Tonight, I talk about one of the things that's most uncomfortable to talk about, and that's me. So I will do my best to do that, but in the context of the work that we all care about, and that is mentoring. And as I thought in preparation for this and thought about mentoring and the many layers of mentoring, there are a couple of things that really came to the fore for me. One is this sense of group mentoring. And the second is this idea of natural mentoring. Words that I wasn't smart enough to put together, but Colleen and team have really brought this sense of natural mentoring to our region, and the ways that we think about the relationships that we have with one another, the ways that we support our young people, and how in the learning landscape we create naturally supportive environments where adults are supporting young people, or adults supporting adults or young people supporting young people. And I say that because while I have had the benefit of being in a mentor-mentee relationship with a young person, in my professional career, there is no point when I've sat down and said to someone, "Would you please be my mentor?" But without doubt, there are people who've either in very natural ways leaned in extra ways to me, or I've leaned into them, and they have no doubt been natural mentors in my life. And I will cite a few of them in the course of the words that I'll share. And as I think about natural mentoring, and some of you will recognize this from Dr. Seuss, right? I think about the people and the places and things that have been part of that natural mentoring environment for me. And at the end of the day, it's really been about relationships, 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 and their willingness to dedicate some time and attention to me, to my work, to my network, to my improving my skills, but also me being willing to lean into that relationship and genuinely learn from and absorb from them. So when I think about people and places, I start first with places. And here I've got to tell, like, I'm a Pittsburgh kid, and I am an absolute product of this place and all of its joys and all of its warts. And it is a significant part of me. And everything about this environment has helped to shape who I am. But I go back to being that little punk, right? I actually grew up for 7 years in New Jersey and attended Nut Swamp Elementary School, the best named elementary school in America, I do believe. And also then later at Hosack Elementary School in the North Allegheny School District in the northern suburbs here in Pittsburgh. And to this day, probably just like you, I can cite specific teachers. I start with Mrs. Valente, the world's most extraordinary kindergarten teacher who was an artist by background. And when I think back about what it is that she did for me and for my classroom, she was a mentor extraordinaire, a teacher extraordinaire who was incredibly attentive to relationships and personal caring, and created that atmosphere for learning in our kindergarten classroom that let us all soar. I think too of Mrs. Fisher, maybe the world's best arts teacher, and the work that she had done alongside so many other teachers in those classrooms. At Hosack Elementary, I think of 3 teachers that looped with us: Mrs. Spitznagel, Mrs. Stuppelbein, and Mr. Seifert. Great names, right? Such Pittsburgh names. And you know, about 10 days ago, I had dinner with Mrs. Spitznagel. Like, I still am in a relationship with these teachers that were present in my life nearly 40 years ago. And it goes back to relationships, relationships, relationships. What they were willing to invest in me as a young person. And ideally, I've been able to reciprocate along the way. And I will say, I still have trouble calling her Linda. So, and she tells me every time, like, we can't get together if you're not going to call me Linda. But you all understand. So let me fast forward, because when I think about place, it was mentioned that I went to the University of Notre Dame. And this is significant for me because I was deeply involved with the Center for Social Concerns on that campus. And there were both some professionals and educators who were deeply involved in the Center for Social Concerns that just supported me and my work at the South Bend Center for the Homeless over the 4 years of being a student there in South Bend. And they're the ones who introduced me to maybe the most significant mentor in my life, Robert Payton, who then introduced me to maybe the second most important mentor in my life, and that's Joe Fleischman. So Robert Payton was this incredible Renaissance man. He had been provost at Washington University in St. Louis. He was president of the Exxon Educational Foundation, and had this incredible career professionally. I had the chance to meet him when he was the director of what is called the School of Philanthropy at Indiana University. And you can see behind him stacks of books. So we had these seminars that were in the basement of his house library weekly during a year in which I was a fellow at the Center of Philanthropy in Indianapolis with IU. And despite having had great education in high school and in college, it was there in that year that with Robert Payton that I felt like I really learned what it meant to learn, what it meant to read books, what it meant to interact with ideas, what it meant to talk about issues, engage with issues, wrestle with issues, debate issues, and really to be in fellowship in close ways with other human beings. And Robert Payton was at the core of that, and the 5 other fellows that were part of that. And I think back to that group mentoring experience, but also the natural mentoring experience that Mr. Payton created with us as a group and with us individually. And it was Robert Payton who introduced me to Joe Fleischman, who's a professor of both law and public policy at Duke University. And Joel is, again, someone who took me under his wing, who challenged me in my coursework, introduced me to his own networks, introduced me to career opportunities, really took time out of his time and dedicated it to me, but lots of other students and also his peer educators at Duke. And again, just someone that I think if I'd sat down and said, would you be my mentor? He would have said yes. And he's still an important presence in my life today. But he was someone who also stepped into that role of natural mentor and meant so much to me. So from my schooling, I come back to Pittsburgh, and that was nearly 20 years ago now. And I could cite really dozens of individuals, including individuals that are in this Zoom call right now. But I think to the experiences that I've had in reciprocal professional relationships, I think of someone like Estelle Comey, a local attorney who was at the time chair of the Forbes funds where I had an opportunity to work, or Kevin Kearns, who was the executive director at the Forbes funds preceding me. The amount of time that they invested in me and my early leadership in the nonprofit sector locally, in the field of philanthropy, and particularly as a 28, 29-year-old, took a big chance on me, a huge, great big chance on me. And in so doing, also gave me a lot of support, a lot of coaching, a lot of care and attention in their relationships. I skipped over and shouldn't, because I began my career at Buchanan, Ingersoll and Rooney, and it was Tom Van Kirk who was at the time the chair of the litigation section of Buchanan Ingersoll, and later became CEO of the firm. And really unusual to think about the way in which he personally engaged with and supported me, particularly as a first-year associate, which is an uncommon experience, but it was common in Tom's life. And I've seen him do it with so many other people because he really cared about people. And again, stepped into that natural mentoring role with us in creating opportunities, introducing us to his own networks, and really finding ways to support us in our work. Fast forward to my work at the Grebel Foundation, where incredibly I've now been for 15 years. My predecessor, current trustee, Susan Brownlee, Chip Burke, my board chair, who's been so intimately involved with the mentoring partnership for the past 25 years. People like Chip and Susan, what they meant to me and still mean to me in terms of being coaches and mentors and counselors, but also friends and caring human beings who are present in my life in that real reciprocal exchange of, again, a natural mentoring relationship. And then it was mentioned the work of Remake Learning, which is this vibrant network of educators in and out of school, from higher education to early learning, And I think of folks like Valerie Kinlock, who's the current dean at the School of Education at the University of Pittsburgh, or Sunana Chand, who had been a previous director for Remake Learning. You know, folks who are older than me, younger than me, engaged in different careers, but how as a group, we've really sort of mentored and coached and supported one another and really leaned into that relationship that allowed us to go beyond and allows us to go beyond what is ideally a highly functioning professional relationship to much more of a collective human relationship. And the power of their presence in my life is undeniable. And I'm a product of all of these and many other people. And again, it's not just those people, it's those places. I think about these networks like Remake Learning and efforts like Remake Learning Days. I think about my career for 5 years at the Forbes Funds and the hundreds of people who got involved in the Greater Pittsburgh Nonprofit Partnership and how that collectively became a community as I allowed myself to lean into it. And I think too about folks like Father Ryan and Sister Lynn Miller and others at Focus on Renewal in McKees Rocks, who played an absolutely pivotal role in my life in 1993 in shaping my understanding about justice and inequality and poverty, and how more than a quarter century later, they also remain really pivotal in life. So when I think about places and mentoring, I think place is important and they leave traces, and Pittsburgh is a central character in my professional development and also the chances and has created chances for me to engage both nationally and internationally. But probably like a lot of you and things you wrote down, you thought probably first and foremost personally. And here I think about my wife and my 2 daughters. And apart from the familial relationship we have, the personal relationship my wife and I obviously have, and the parent-child relationship that my kids and I have, I feel like I've learned a lot from mentoring itself and the field of mentoring and the research about mentoring and the privilege I've had to be involved in the mentoring partnership, because ultimately so much of it is about what does it mean to be a great human? And what does it mean to seriously be in relationship with another, to be vulnerable, to be reciprocal, to be respectful, to create those safe spaces of caring that contribute to our well-being. And the work of the mentoring partnership has made me a better husband and a better dad. When I think, when I start to zoom out and I think about heroes, and we all have heroes in our lives, I never had the privilege of knowing Roberto Clemente. I did get a chance to meet Fred Rogers. I knew his wife much better. I think too of heroes in our lives and how heroes in many ways are unannounced and unknown mentors. And for me, the 2 lives that these individuals led have been incredible bellwethers. And I want to close in particular with Fred Rogers because it's in my work with Ryan Rudzeski, Ryan Rudzeski, who's my co-author for my book, someone with whom I've also had this incredible relationship that goes beyond a professional relationship as a writer. We had the privilege of writing this book, When You Wonder You're Learning, which was published just about 4 months ago. And it's absolutely joyful to talk about this book. And this is a book ultimately about not Fred Rogers, but about the blueprints for learning that he left for us. And to see Fred Rogers work not just as that caring, loving person that so many of us had in our lives, that mentor on our television in many ways, but to see him also as a learning scientist who was deliberate about what it is that he engineered, how he engineered it, and what it is that he engineered in producing those television visits, nearly 1,000 of them, how that's instructive for what we do in our schools, in our museums, in our libraries, in all of the places where young people learn, even right here in our own homes. And in our book, Ryan and I try and lay that out and do so from 6 chapters that variously address curiosity, creativity, collaboration, words that are very familiar when we talk about mentoring. And I hope some of you might find reason to pick up the book, read the book, share the book. It's been, I have to say, it's been a great ride these first 4 months of publication. So Kristen, I hope I got in you got a little bit of my mindset when I think about mentoring, because mentoring on one hand seems so simple and straightforward, but mentoring, I think, has many layers. Done well, it's actually really complex. And for me, when I think about the people that I regard as mentors, while they've not been a formal mentor, they have absolutely been mentors and mentoring in what it is that I'm still becoming. And I hope I conveyed that at least halfway clearly enough.
You did. Thank you. I loved it so much, stood out and made me want to hear about what you said, but I really liked when you started with, at certain points in your life, some people leaned into you and other times you leaned into them, and it kind of showed that reciprocal, maybe there wasn't that moment where you said, hey, can you be my mentor? But it was more of just the action of leaning in or having others lean in towards you. And I really relate to that, and that resonated a lot with me. So we will have some time for Q&A down the road here, but I want to make sure we kind of build on the great discussion that Gregg started for us and brainstorm about the meaning of mentoring. What does mentoring mean to all of us? And before we got on the call, we were, a small group of us were talking. We said it can sometimes be an amorphous concept that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I'd love to kind of, hear from everyone about what mentoring means to you. And earlier you met Emily Marco. She is going to live illustrate this brainstorm to kind of help us visually capture the magic of mentoring. And if you haven't seen this before, so I've had the privilege of sitting in on one of Emily's meetings, and it blew my mind. So this will be kind of a real treat just to see visually capturing our discussion. And I also want to turn it over to one of our Young Professional Board members, JC Howard, to help us kick things off.
Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm JC. So the first question, I guess, Kristen already said it. So what does mentoring mean to you?
Before someone jumps in, I just have to say, I had no idea Emily was capturing that. It is so amazing to see that. It is just so amazing.
Sorry. There you are, look. So we had Emily live illustrating behind the scenes while Gregg was talking. So that kind of is, and there it is, lean in. So I love it. So yeah, what does mentoring mean to you? So we want this to be pretty casual. So feel free to, unmute yourself if you have a story to share, or if you just have thoughts on it, and we'll keep this going. We have some other thought starter questions, or we can just kind of let it take its own shape organically, but don't be shy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carly. I am on the Young Professionals Board, and mentoring means a lot to me. I went to school at Duquesne University, and when I was a student, they had us get in a very formal mentoring program, and I had a professional who helped me academically and also, just professionally as well, but helped me prepare for the real world. So then flash forward a few years later, I have been mentoring probably since I've graduated. So it's, and I've been paying it forward and helping them. And it's just like so rewarding helping them with their resumes, watching them grow and see their success.
Thanks, Carly.
And I'll chime in here too. So I've never had, like, I'm sure it's common, I've never had a formal mentor, but I've had, a whole number growing up of people that, whether they knew it or not, they, had a significant impact in my life and definitely were mentors. And, I'm early in my career, and just this past year, actually, I had a weird moment where a kid, I played basketball whenever I was in college, and one of my former teammates that was several years younger than me, he got into the same field that I got into. And through someone in our network, I was told he actually referred to me as one of his mentors, which I view him as a friend. I never considered myself to be a mentor, but I just, I feel like there's been a slight transition, because I still have a ton of mentors, but obviously even myself, I've, had some impact on others, which is a weird thing.
Kristen, I know I just talked, but it's interesting to hear JC, because it goes to that sense of lean in. I think when I think back to my career, I don't know if I was scared or uncomfortable to, specifically just say to someone, hey, would you invest time in me? Would you be willing to be my mentor? But I think in that action of leaning in, or when you receive it and accept that, it's sort of like an unspoken ask in so many ways, which is why I really wanted to emphasize that. And I heard that what JC just said as well.
Absolutely. Who else? Anybody else have a story?
Yeah. Don't be shy.
Hey, this is Jared. So I don't know, when I think about one word that sums up at least the best mentors in my life, it's been just their sincerity. And it takes a little bit of time to mature, but looking back on the relationships that have had the biggest impact in my life, I can look back and see different points. And I'm sure this will come up because the person I wrote down, this is exactly the way that I feel about her. But I can look back and see places where I was starting to misstep and I didn't even know it. And through, having the sincerity to just come back and say, give me the support up front, but then even behind the scenes, all the support that she was giving me, and it was mostly in my career. But to look back and again, take some time to mature and see that. But that's what mentoring certainly means to me.
This is Doug. I'll comment. We're talking about having official mentors, and I think back early in my career, which goes back over 40 years, I'm not sure the term mentoring or a mentor was even used or existed back then. Basically, you might have an advisor, somebody you were assigned to at work if you were a trainee. But I use the term you glom onto someone, because if you're starting a professional career and you see someone that you admire that's successful, he or she could be someone you looked up to. And if you're not shy, you'll go up to that person and ask them for their help, and you'll begin a relationship with them. And you'll be surprised, they'll be honored. Generally, most people are honored that a young person comes up to them and asks for help and seeks advice and friendship. We didn't call it mentors. It was an informal relationship, but I look back, it was mentoring. And I had two people like that early on in my career. They're both deceased at this point. Both were named Bill, but without them, I wouldn't be where I am today in my profession. So I owe a lot to those two people. And I try to pay it back, because now I'm in that position. I'm a senior person, and a lot of young advisors come to me, male, female, all ages. They come to me, people starting out in the profession, and they seek my advice. And I remember the advice I got from Bill and Bill, and I'm willing to pay back and pay it forward.
Here's to the bills, right? All the bills out there. Why, one of the questions we had on here as a thought starter was, why is mentoring important? And I mean, I think, we're sharing all these stories and we're seeing the obvious that there's, you're growing personally, but I think a lot of times, in my experience, and I think we're hearing that as a theme today too, is you're not even really realizing maybe that, this relationship is a mentoring relationship. It's just, you're either supporting someone or someone supporting you. So you oftentimes don't realize it till you're looking back and maybe kind of thinking on things with a mentoring mindset. So why is mentoring so important? Why does it play such a critical role in our lives?
This is Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi. I'm the director for the foster grandparent program. So a lot of your faces are new to me, but I'm not originally from the Pittsburgh area. And so whenever I came into this profession that I'm in now, I didn't really know a lot of people. And I was always, a small town country girl who was very introverted and things like that. And I got put into a city which was totally out of my comfort zone, right? And I had a few people in my life that were just there that really was encouraging to me. And even though I knew I could do certain things, I didn't necessarily, quote unquote, believe in myself that I could do everything that was put forth in me, or to try to move up in my profession and everything else like that. So I think just having someone be in your corner and believe in you more than sometimes you even believe in yourself, and to always want to help someone else be their best self, I think is very important. It kind of refers back to what Doug was saying. And I too think that the word mentoring wasn't always used whenever I was growing up or where I grew up and things like that, but it just kind of happened organically.
I'll reiterate what something Jared said earlier, basically, how, especially coming up, mentors could really point out, I don't know, mistakes is the wrong, I forget exactly how you said it, Jared, but basically, like, when they see you maybe going in the wrong direction and basically you don't even realize it, and they kind of steer you back, and then later on you realize, wow, they were really looking out for me there. I think that's a huge thing. And it's happened many times for me as well with some of the mentors that I've had.
This is Colleen. I think about the so many people from grade school on. Greg, when you put your pictures of your grade school up, I thought, wow, I could look back to when I was chosen, right, to do something where I probably wouldn't have raised my hand, and some caring teacher saw more, or figured I wouldn't say no, or that my parents wouldn't say no, but gave me opportunities that, I used to go to a little senior center and sit with Mr. and Mrs. Jack Apple, whose name I still remember, right? Or help the nuns at the convent, or participate in a national conference in a leadership role that I never would have signed up for. But I think about those adults in my life all along who saw something and gave me opportunities that I probably didn't have the confidence to raise my hand and take on myself. And yet they believed in me enough that I didn't want to let them down. And so I tried to make the best and do my best. But there's so many examples in my life. And then I just really want to share, I've had a chance to be a mentor to middle school, high school, and then to a first and third grader. And it was fun. It was just fun. And that was something that was really special to me. And I believe they enjoyed the time that we got to spend together too. And I think about Patience and I doing the ice ball tour of Pittsburgh, where, together we were researching where can you buy an ice ball, and then trying to drive there and find it. I did the driving, but thinking about the things that we did together that gave her that undivided time, and me that undivided time. I had nothing else to do but spend time with her during that time. So I feel like those are all, Greg, I have to say, I am continuing to, I continue to work through reading the book. I want to just sit down and yell to people each time, oh, listen to what it says about this. Oh, listen to what it says about this. But the one thing most recently I read about was about having time that's unstructured and not planned to communicate and be together. And I think that's one thing that mentoring lets us do. When I committed to be a mentor, it was time. It was that 1 hour a week that I didn't have my phone out, and I didn't have a schedule of what I wanted to do. It was about our time together. And so I just like to share that with everyone.
And Colleen, in that very Fred Rogers sentence, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go for it, Greg.
I just was gonna say, in that very Fred Rogers sense, in a way, a mentor says, I like you just the way you are, right? And when Fred Rogers said that, he wasn't saying, I think you're perfect. He wasn't saying, I don't think you have any work to do. But what he was saying is, I respect your humanity and I acknowledge you and I respect you. And I think you have things worthwhile to share with this world. And I think that's what a mentor does, because typically a mentor is not a family member, it's not a friend, but it's someone in the world who is encouraging you to be you and wants to support you in being you, and exploring what's ahead. And isn't that what a great mentor does, and what you did for patients and others?
I feel like that is a perfect segue and ending note. So we have a few minutes left. I want to be cognizant of time. I do want to open it up to a couple of questions for Gregg. If anybody has a question, if you'd like to go ahead and ask. Oh, thanks, Emily. Any questions for Gregg? I'll put a plug in for the book too, because I'm also working my way through it, and I've been highlighting more of the, it'd be easier to just not highlight things and just assume everything that's, not highlighted is important, because my whole pages are highlighted. Any questions?
I'll ask a question. So Gregg, most of us, well, a few of us are on the Young Professionals Board, and I know some of other board members have joined us. For some of us younger folks that are more in the mentee category right now, I guess, how would you say, as we kind of look forward in that kind of pay it forward type way, finding those opportunities, or kind of, I don't know if there's really preparing is the right word, but how do we kind of look at making eventually that transition from being more of the mentee into the mentor role? Or what advice would you have as we kind of look toward that?
In some ways, I think it becomes inevitable, and it happens to you the way JC was describing earlier, right? Because I think in a great reciprocal relationship, and even with an adult and a child, it starts to be this great exchange where the adult is sort of learning and experiencing and is receiving as much as giving. And I think in a great professional relationship, I think that starts to happen. And in that relationship, when someone starts to open up his or her networks to you, I feel like that exchange starts to happen. And then you become the one who starts to open doors for others as well, as a great mentor does that for you.
Thank you.
Time for another question, anyone?
I have one. Gregg, so it was clear early on, you talked about your experience at Notre Dame, being very passionate for service, and it sounded like even for the homeless in all 4 years. Like, you talked a little bit about grace, but what, if you look back, like where did you see that spark? Was it one of your mentors that planted that bug in you? Like, you obviously have a life dedicated to service. I'm just curious where that was kind of kindled.
Jared, that's a great question, and I don't have a precise answer for you. And it's probably a reflection too that there are many people that leave traces in our lives. So I think about someone like my dad, and I remember being in Washington, D.C. with my family one time, and we were walking from the Smithsonian back to our hotel. My dad had seen a homeless man who wasn't wearing shoes, and as a young kid, I witnessed my dad taking off his shoes and giving his shoes to this man and walking back barefoot to the hotel, which he didn't make a big deal out of, but you can imagine as a kid, that's sort of a profound moment. Like, what just happened? Why did my dad do that? I think about teachers like Mrs. Call and the work that she did. I was very involved with student government, student council in high school, and the ways that she got us involved in service. I think about Lou Nani and some of the folks at the South Bend Center for the Homeless, and then the Center for Social Concerns, and how they lit that. It just was, I think all of them did what it is that Fred Rogers advocates, and they created that landscape for learning, where you felt safe and respected to ask lots of questions, to explore things. And I think these people in these moments left traces of just a building of a swelling commitment to a life of service, and and there was a priest, I'm not Catholic, so I should acknowledge that, but there was a priest at Notre Dame who would say, you know when you're ready for service when it's called forth from you. And at some point, you know, I just felt that calling, and it's how I've ideally committed my career.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, we're just about at time. I do want to just kind of bring us back full circle, and you know, the mentoring mindset exercise we did at the beginning. I just want to take a minute to acknowledge all of these special folks, all of these great people that we wrote down, and many more. So if we could all just take a minute, if you feel comfortable sharing your paper, holding it up. I want to see. There we go. I see Mama Bear, Ron, Mrs. Holyfield, Fred. Colleen, I knew you were going to pick Fred. Tina, there we go. All right. Thank you guys so much. So, I mean, there are many different people that play these roles in our lives, and I hope just, you know, seeing one name on paper, maybe reach out to this person if he or she is still around and give a thank you. And on that note, I want to thank you all for joining us for this virtual happy hour. Greg, thank you so much for sharing your story. Emily, for sharing your talents with us. Everyone here, we're so appreciative of you and all your support. Our big Magic of Mentoring event, if we want to continue this celebration, is on October 26th. Doug McPhail, who's on the call, is one of our esteemed honorees this year, and we are so excited. Doug, I can't wait to see what bow tie we have for October 26th. I'm very excited for that. So we'll share more information about the event. We would love to see you all there with us. And in the meantime, thank you again for giving of your night tonight. So thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for what you all do.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye. Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I hope that was responsive. And I was trying to be mindful of the team. I hope I didn't go on too long with my slides. Yeah. Okay, good.
No, you were perfect. So I'll share we're going to share out all of Emily's drawings. And
that was so cool.
We actually, I know, maybe I should have given you a heads up. She was going to be illustrating your portion too. I'm sorry.
I actually took a screenshot of it because I was like,